This is a video that I did many years ago now, titled World Water Market and Water Derivatives. And in this video, I went over comments from Citigroup's top economist, Willem Boyder, which I brought up in another link that's easier to read here. Citigroup's top economist Willem Boyder predicts a globally integrated market for freshwater within 25 to 30 years, and I believe he made these comments in 2014. Boyder also predicts that the water market will eventually dwarf the market for oil and all other commodities, and this is an insane proposition, right? The privatization and commodification of the very substance that each and every one of us requires to live. That's truly some dystopian language there as it relates to what they have planned for water. Once the spot markets for water are integrated, futures markets and other derivative water-based financial instruments, puts, calls, swaps, both exchange-traded and OTC, will follow. There will be different grades and types of fresh water, just the way we have light, sweet, and heavy sour crude oil today. Water as an asset class will, in my view, become eventually the single most important physical commodity-based asset class, dwarfing oil, copper, agricultural commodities, and precious metals. And the concern should be obvious here when you look at everything else that's listed in this context, in the sense that because all of these markets were created around commodities like oil, copper, gold, silver, they are controlled by the financial markets. That's how the price is determined, and due to their control inherently of the markets, they can make the price be whatever they want it to be, within reason, right? I mean, there are some forces beyond their control, kind of, but they can manipulate things in a way to make the price be whatever they want it to be. And that's especially true with oil. I mean, whatever you're paying for gas is completely contrived. They are setting that price because it furthers their agenda in however many ways that it furthers their agenda. But at the time that I went over this quote in this video, it was all theoretical for the most part. Sure, they had some pilot programs in Australia, and it was sort of getting started in California, but it was largely theoretical. And just a couple weeks ago, maybe even a week ago, this story hit the news. California water futures begin trading amid fear of scarcity. And I have amid fear of scarcity highlighted here because this is how they always achieve a goal like this. They point to scarcity, artificial scarcity, as a way to justify the actions that are being taken. I mean, this is the fundamental basis of society as a whole, artificial scarcity. But here we have one of the first steps in the realization of the theoretical that Willem Boyder was talking about here. I mean, keep in mind, he said within 25 to 30 years, and that was 7, 8 years ago. So now we're getting a little closer to his vision here. We're getting into the 15 to 18 years away range. Right? So we start seeing the beginning stages of this commodity market for water emerging. Water joined gold, oil, and other commodities traded on Wall Street, highlighting worries that the life-sustaining natural resource may become scarce across more of the world. Farmers, hedge funds, and municipalities alike are now able to hedge against or bet on future water availability in California, the biggest U.S. agricultural market and world's 5th largest economy. CME Group created the January 2021 contract linked to California's 1.1 billion spot water market. Last traded Monday at 496 index points, equal to 496 per acre foot. The contracts, a first of their kind in the U.S., were announced in September as heat and wildfires ravaged the U.S. West Coast and as California was emerging from an 8-year drought. Now, this is the fascinating part of all this, how the contrived man-made climate change narrative is playing into these sorts of things being created. We know that this is a completely contrived narrative, which is not to say that there isn't quote-unquote climate change happening as a result of larger forces that has to do with the sun and its various cycles, or other larger cosmic cycles that take place on the Earth, or that have an impact on the weather and conditions that we experience on the Earth. But the idea that human beings are causing these changes is in all of their literature going back to the Club of Rome documents where they outright say, oh, hey, we're going to create this idea where humans are the enemies. Because if humans are the enemies, we can regulate that kind of activity. We can control that activity, and thus we can achieve our goals by promoting that idea. And so it's interesting when you look at the cloud seeding technology and what they may or may not be able to do with the weather. Now, obviously, throughout history, there are many examples of droughts that have occurred throughout the world. So again, we're not saying that there aren't droughts taking place. We're not saying that California didn't go through some natural drought. However, with the existence of cloud seeding, we have to acknowledge the possibility that a drought could be created or exacerbated in California to further agendas like this one. Because obviously a lot of things start in California, so it would be very convenient to have all of these droughts and wildfires raging that would produce the necessary impetus for certain changes to be made. Because the implication is that it's humans causing these things to happen. So now we need to regulate human activity. Okay, here's one of the first ways we can do this as it relates to water. Let's start trading these contracts so that these farmers can hedge against their risks of not having water available due to natural disasters of whatever kind. They always start with safety of normal people as the reason to do something. We're seeing this in real time with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? All of these changes that they're trying to ram through are in the interest of safety, protecting you and those you know and love, right? So this is the same idea here. Hey, we need to protect these farmers from what's going on. So, hey, we got to have these contracts traded on Wall Street where people can hedge against water scarcity. And we know that climate change is a real thing that's happening in this philosophy. So it's only going to get worse. So it's a good idea that we bring this kind of thing into existence now. But the cloud seeding aspect of this is very interesting. Right now, I work outside. I look at the sky every day, and knowing the weather is a part of the job. So I'm hyper-focused on it, just knowing what kind of weather I'm going to be in every day. And I can't tell you how many times that the weather forecasts have called for a shift, a cold front moving in, some kind of storm system coming through. And we see days before this is supposed to happen, the trails being laid down in the sky. We see everything responding to these trails being laid down day after day after day, leading up to the change that's supposed to happen. So again, I don't know if they can actually create their own weather. that seems difficult to imagine because these patterns have existed for so long. The jet streams and everything, and they're so big. To the point where the idea of they can actually just create something that isn't related to those larger cycles seems a little dubious, to where I would lean in the direction that they can just influence the intensity of certain things, or within certain trends, they can influence the weather in certain directions. But at the same time, you can imagine that it might be possible to create a tropical storm or a hurricane, or the alternative of that, a drought of some kind, by pushing away rain from a certain area like California. Suffice it to say that cloud seeding and weather manipulation is something that we have to factor into the discussion here. But anyway, reading on. They are meant to serve both as a hedge for big water consumers, such as almond farmers and electric utilities, against water price fluctuations, as well as a scarcity gauge for investors worldwide. Climate change, droughts, population growth, and pollution are likely to make water scarcity issues and pricing a hot topic for years to come, said RBC Capital Markets Managing Director and Analyst Deanne Dre. We are definitely going to watch how this new water futures contract develops. Well, we know exactly how it's going to develop. Willem Boyder told us. This is the start of the worldwide, globally integrated market for fresh water that will be in existence in 25 to 30 years, or more likely 15 years from now, given the time that has passed since he made these comments. And this is the first realization of that end goal, the first act in realizing that end goal. The United Nations has long warned that human-driven climate change is leading to severe droughts and more flooding, making water availability increasingly less predictable. So again, this is where we have a clear, disingenuous statement from an organization that is not to be trusted, in the context of something that we can trust with reasonable certainty, which is the Earth's natural weather cycle. We know these things do happen from time to time, but we see how they're trying to link them together. And then we have to throw in the concept of them being able to influence those natural phenomenon that take place within the quote-unquote weather. In California, the most recent acute dry spell stretched from December 2011 until March of last year, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. The most dire effects took hold in July 2014, with 58% of the state's land suffering exceptional drought, leading to crop and pasture losses and other water emergencies. The futures are tied to the NASDAQ Velez California Water Index, which was started 2 years ago and measures the volume-weighted average price of water. The January 2021 water contract that went live Monday had 2 trades. Water shortages. 2 billion people now live in nations plagued by water problems, and almost 2/3 of the world could face water shortages in just 4 years. Tim McCourt, Global Head of Equity Index and Alternative Investment Products at CME, said in an interview, "The idea of managing risks associated to water is certainly increased in importance." And then here's how they normalize the idea. They point to a farmer in California, and we say, oh yeah, well, this guy's trying to feed his family, and all of these things are starting to happen that are outside of his control. So, hey, he should have the ability to hedge against this uncertainty and potential scarcity in the water market. And who's going to argue with that? No one. And this is how they start these agendas. But in the drama of the moment, you don't think about the long-term consequences of water being priced like a commodity, being priced like oil, gold, or silver. It's insane. It's going to have unimaginable effects on the price that everyone is having to pay for water. And that's just going to, I mean, you can imagine water wars breaking out in the future. We had oil wars, or at least that was part of the reason that some of these wars took place, as far as it relates to America invading other countries, it was at least partly due to acquiring oil fields. In Afghanistan, it was lithium and other things that are present in electronics. So you can imagine a scenario in the future where there are these wars started to acquire water. The futures will allow market participants to see what is everybody's best guess. And again, no, there is no everybody here. There is the financial markets that are completely controlled and contrived as it relates to the price of controlled commodities like gold, silver, oil, and, if they get their wish, water. And then they bring in somebody here who says, oh, yeah, this isn't going to transform the water market. I wouldn't worry about it. Meanwhile, the guy who actually told us what was going on is involved in the climate change project, climate change plus finance investing in water. And here you have the World Water Council, the World Bank, the World Resources Institute doing analysis with Willem Boyder, who told everyone what the plan was. So this is very real, and I just want to draw attention to it again, even though no one talks about it. For obvious reasons, this is kind of a dry, boring subject, but it's one that everybody should be aware of and pay attention to and resist ideologically, right? Don't let this propaganda take hold, because it could be very scary in the future, right? What if they start rationing water? And I mean, you can imagine truly dystopian scenarios where they're rationing water in combination with your digital health passport, right? Oh, here's your daily allotment of water based on your COVID-25 vaccine status. So all of this is interrelated, and it all ties into the smart grid, cybernetics, and everything that's associated with that. And I don't want to get into those weeds here. I just wanted to go over this real quick and draw some more attention to the fact that, yes, this agenda continuing unabated, and there was a huge step forward that took place just recently with the first water futures actually trading on the financial markets, launched by the CME Group, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, for those who don't know. So I'll leave it there. Later.